I can say without hesitation that we have been deceived about our true history, and nobody wants you to know. Jordan Maxwell uncovered clear evidence of incredibly advanced civilizations capable of building pyramids aligned with the stars and wielding cosmic forces we barely understand. While we believe we have evolved, we are actually just groping at traces of this ancestral knowledge systematically kept hidden by powerful institutions. Take a look at religious symbols like the papal mitre. It appears sacred, yet it has roots in the worship of the fish god Dagon, silently preserving age-old rituals that keep the public in total ignorance. And it does not stop there. Secret societies inherited this knowledge and continue manipulating the world using hidden emblems such as the Roman fasces to display power and control. Our collective slumber is not accidental. It is precisely the main mechanism that allows this hoax to continue. Unless we wake up now, we will remain at the mercy of an elite that keeps us in the dark while they preserve and benefit from all this lost wisdom.
There is a paradox at the heart of modern archaeology. As our investigative technologies advance, we uncover more evidence that challenges the conventional narrative of human evolution. This is not mere speculation. These are documented archaeological anomalies whose explanations remain incomplete within current historical paradigms. Human history today represents only a fragment of a reality that may be much richer and more complex. We might compare ourselves to spectators at a shadow play, seeing only faint projections of what truly happened in the millennia before us. For all its methodological advances, contemporary science still operates within historical models that are beginning to be questioned by increasingly intriguing evidence. A revealing example of this phenomenon emerged when archaeologists uncovered Göbekli Tepe, a sophisticated monumental site dating back to about 10,000 BC. This discovery challenged fundamental assumptions about the development of primitive human societies. Klaus Schmidt, the archaeologist responsible for the excavations, expressed his amazement. "We found sophisticated temples where we expected to see primitive huts. Our entire model of human development had to be rethought." This provocative perspective remains on the fringes of mainstream academic consensus. What these findings suggest is not necessarily a continuous upward line of progress, as is often assumed, but possibly cycles of advanced knowledge, decline, and rediscovery. Several civilizations may have reached remarkable levels of technical and spiritual sophistication, only to vanish under the sands of time or in the wake of catastrophic events, leaving behind only enigmatic fragments of their legacy. Faced with these indications, a natural question arises. Where are the concrete pieces of evidence of such extraordinary achievements? The answer might be closer than we imagine, carved in stone, encoded in myths, preserved in ancient texts, and passed down through oral traditions. The challenge lies in our ability to interpret these traces beyond the conventional lenses of scientific materialism and the strictly linear view of cultural evolution. Massive pyramids, megalithic structures, colossal blocks fitted with precision, and medieval maps bearing mysterious details, each element forms a historical puzzle we have yet to fully solve. Independent researchers and academics debate whether these are mere coincidences or signs of something far greater than our current theories explain. The fundamental question is not just whether this advanced knowledge truly existed, but why certain viewpoints gain more traction than others when forming our collective vision of history. Which forces and interests shape our understanding of the past? And above all, how does that affect what we believe is possible in the present and the future? This investigative video invites us to explore several interconnected domains, universal laws that may govern both material and spiritual phenomena, religious symbols that transcend cultures, initiatory societies that allegedly protect and transmit ancestral knowledge, and finally, our essential nature as conscious beings. The aim is not to dismiss critical thinking, but to apply it more rigorously, questioning entrenched assumptions while also examining alternative hypotheses. In modern thought, the word occultism often evokes associations with sinister or superstitious practices. However, etymological analysis reveals another perspective. The term comes from the Latin occultus, meaning hidden or secret, referring to knowledge reserved for those who are prepared to receive it. Far from being something dark or irrational, this field of study historically constituted an integrated system of understanding the laws governing both physical phenomena and aspects of human consciousness. In the famous Library of Alexandria, before its destruction, there was no official separation between astronomy and astrology, chemistry and alchemy, physics and metaphysics. Researchers like Hypatia studied celestial mechanics alongside possible symbolic correspondences, operating under the principle that the cosmos displays patterns reflected on multiple levels of reality. This integrated perspective is summed up in the Hermetic maxim, as above, so below, as within, so without, the idea that the macrocosm and the microcosm are interconnected. Science historian Margaret Alec documented how this unity of knowledge gradually splintered. Political and institutional factors created artificial divisions, separating the study of the physical world from its conscious dimensions and leaving spiritual themes exclusively to religion or psychology. Isaac Newton, for instance, spent much of his time on alchemical studies and esoteric interpretations of scripture, yet he is primarily remembered as the founder of classical physics. While observing celestial bodies, ancient civilizations developed calendars and predicted eclipses, but they also drew metaphysical lessons about the cosmic order. Historian Giorgio de Santillana, in Hamlet's Mill, argues that seemingly fantastic myths encode sophisticated astronomical knowledge, such as the precession of the equinoxes, a cycle of about 25,920 years that requires generations of observation to understand. At the same time, some quantum physicists like Amit Goswami point to possible parallels between non-dual ancient philosophies and aspects of modern physics. Experiments such as the double-slit experiment suggest a profound relationship between consciousness and matter, an idea already present in spiritual traditions that claims the mind is crucial in shaping reality. Genuine occultism sought laws and principles that operate behind what is perceivable, much like science investigates invisible forces, such as gravity or electromagnetism. Various esoteric traditions developed methodologies to study fields and energies that affect consciousness. Astrology, in its original form, was not merely a fatalistic system of predictions, but a lens for understanding cyclical dynamics and their psychological and social effects. Alchemists, for the most part, were not just after physical gold. They often interpreted their laboratory processes as metaphors for internal transformations. Similarly, universal principles like polarity, correspondence, vibration, and rhythm appear in ancient texts and can be compared to modern discoveries in physics or biology. Scientific progress, which focuses on measurable, reproducible phenomena, has largely set aside subtler, more subjective dimensions, but is beginning to reconsider them as it encounters the limits of strict materialism. As Sir Arthur Eddington warned, the developments of modern physics suggest a fundamentally non-materialistic conception of reality. In this meeting ground between scientific frontiers and spiritual traditions, the call is not to reject rigorous methods, but rather to expand them to include systematic study of consciousness. The apparent conflict between science and spirituality arises from historical and cultural separation, not from any intrinsic incompatibility. Accounts from Newton, Johannes Kepler, Giordano Bruno, and others show that for them, it was natural to combine metaphysical insights with scientific inquiry. Today, reconciliation gains traction in leading laboratories in fields such as neurophenomenology, neurotheology, and meditation research. Thus, the question is not whether ancient traditions anticipated contemporary theories, but rather acknowledge that different modes of knowing can illuminate diverse facets of reality. True occultism always encouraged critical thinking and direct experience, which is a practice mirrored by those who study consciousness phenomena with scientific seriousness. If the mind is not just a byproduct of the brain, but an active element in reality, then investigating spirituality becomes a valid exploration of the world, not a regression into superstitious beliefs. An intriguing phenomenon in Western political architecture is the omnipresence of the fasces, a bundle of rods tied around an axe. It appears on legislative podiums in the United States, at the Lincoln Memorial, and even on the seal of the US Senate. The term gave rise to the word fascism, and many associate it with the power of the state. In ancient Rome, it symbolized that the union of citizens under a central government granted power over life and death. Its use in modern republics suggests a conscious symbolic continuity rather than mere aesthetic decoration. Researchers like Manly P. Hall have documented the strong Masonic influence in the founding of the United States. George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, and other leaders were active Freemasons. The layout of Washington, D.C. was supposedly designed with astronomical and symbolic alignments, reflecting ideas preserved in Masonic lodges. Pierre L'Enfant, the architect and a fellow Mason, created a city plan in which key monuments and buildings form precise geometric patterns. David Overson, author of The Secret Architecture of Our Nation's Capital, analyzed a series of Masonic ceremonies in the American capital, linking them to specific positions of constellations. It is not limited to the US. Europe also witnessed the activity of initiatory societies at pivotal moments. The French Revolution saw significant involvement from those linked to philosophical clubs, Masonic lodges, and other secret societies. Many leaders balanced Enlightenment ideals with esoteric rituals. The famous all-seeing eye in pyramids was adopted in official seals, supposedly representing divine providence or the great architect of the universe. Financial elites of the 19th century, such as the Rothschild and Rockefeller families, funded think tanks and influential groups that gathered powerful figures in private meetings. The aim was to shape political and economic policies on a global scale. Whether at the Council on Foreign Relations or the Bilderberg Group, heads of state and CEOs of major corporations meet to discuss issues of worldwide importance. Some see this as legitimate strategic planning. Others consider it a sign of manipulation or invisible government. At the core of these organizations, architectural symbols and rituals preserve the memory of hermetic and philosophical knowledge. Egyptian obelisks were transported to Rome, London, and Washington, symbolically linking power to astronomy. After all, obelisks were used in Egypt as solar measuring instruments. In Vatican City, in central London, and at the White House, each location bears shapes inspired by ancient traditions. One need not believe in all-powerful conspiracies to recognize symbolic influence. Many of these groups rely on esoteric principles that they believe offer wisdom for governing societies. Of course, there are internal disputes and misuse of symbols, yet throughout history, initiatory societies have hosted thinkers, politicians, scientists, and artists searching for unconventional ideas, safe from religious persecution or official censorship. Because not everything was transparent, it is understandable that conspiracy theories emerged. In any case, Ignoring these influences altogether leaves history incomplete. Many leaders drew inspiration from philosophical visions and ancient rituals that shaped monuments, ceremonies, and even certain legal structures. Understanding this symbolic heritage helps explain aesthetic and cultural choices in major cities and sheds light on how political power itself is organized. The Great Pyramid of Giza remains one of humanity's most puzzling archaeological enigmas. This monumental structure incorporates mathematical properties that Western science would only formally describe in the 17th century. Researchers have identified the golden ratio, approximations of pi, references to Earth's circumference, and extremely precise astronomical alignments. How do we reconcile that with the notion that its builders only had copper tools and simple methods at their disposal? In Machu Picchu, Peru, modern engineers marvel at the precision of the stonework. You can slide thin blades through the seams without finding gaps. Some stones weigh several tons and were transported across mountainous terrain, fitted together without mortar, and remain earthquake resistant. At Baalbek in Lebanon, blocks weighing over 800 tons appear to have been moved with an ease that still baffles us. Standard explanations fall short of accounting for every detail. Göbekli Tepe, mentioned earlier, dates to around 9600 BC and features rings of pillars weighing up to 20 tons each. Supposedly, during that era, humans were still nomadic hunter-gatherers without organized agriculture or metalworking. How could they have built something so sophisticated? Researchers like Graham Hancock argue there are traces of advanced knowledge lost after massive catastrophes, surviving only in myths and monuments. Ancient texts refer to golden ages, followed by near-total destruction, forcing civilizations to rebuild. There are also reports of technological artifacts that do not quite fit accepted timelines, such as the so-called Baghdad batteries from 2,000 years ago, or maps depicting an ice-free Antarctica. Others investigate the acoustic and electromagnetic properties of large pyramids, noting that certain materials generate piezoelectric fields under pressure, and that internal chambers amplify specific frequencies. Theories propose that pyramids might have functioned like energetic devices. Although it sounds radical, modern engineers like Christopher Dunn argue that many internal features make little sense if the pyramid was simply a tomb. Whatever the case, there is widespread evidence that ancient peoples had a deep understanding of astronomy, mathematics, acoustics, engineering, and also symbolic and spiritual knowledge. The linear story of progress from the cave to today's advanced technology may be oversimplified. These insights do not diminish the accomplishments of modern science. Rather, they place them in a broader context. Perhaps we are not the first to achieve certain levels of sophistication. We may be part of a cycle of civilizations rising, reaching high complexity, and, for various reasons, environmental, military, or cosmic collapse. What remains are ruins and legends, and each cycle tries to decipher the enigma left by the ones before it. Religious symbols we take for granted today, the cross, ceremonial headdress, and the staff of power, have origins much older than the religions using them. The pointed hat worn by certain clerics, for example, resembles the ritual adornment of pre-Christian aquatic deities. The fish symbol adopted by Christianity also appears in ancient cults devoted to sea gods. In his comparative mythology research, Joseph Campbell showed that myths worldwide share symbolic patterns. Almost every culture has stories of catastrophic floods, heroes who die and return to life, cosmic serpents, or trees linking heaven and earth. The theory is that these themes represent profound psychological forces, archetypes repeating in the collective psyche. Flood beliefs might reflect real cataclysms, while also functioning as metaphors for transformative experiences. The cross, for instance, appears in Egypt, the Ankh, in pre-Columbian cultures, and in Neolithic monuments, always symbolizing the intersection of axes, whether the meeting of material and spiritual planes or other fundamental dualities. Later on, Christianity reinterprets the cross in the figure of Christ, yet the symbolic roots are far older. The caduceus, Hermes' staff entwined with serpents, also appears in Sumerian and Egyptian myths, and in the staff of Moses in Exodus, suggesting a common source of mythic inspiration. Carl Jung believed these symbols reveal the collective unconscious universal structures in the psyche manifested through similar imagery. Pyramids found in both Egypt and the Americas could be evidence of a shared inheritance, or at least a psychological pattern that views the man-made mountain as a way to approach the sacred. Flood narratives and culture heroes are ways the human mind records monumental catastrophes and reworks them into stories of inner cycles. Beyond psychological interpretations, it has also been suggested that many myths encode astronomical, mathematical, or philosophical knowledge. Hamlet's Mill argues that seemingly fantastic tales about sacred mills have connections to the precession of the equinoxes. Similarly, Egyptian rituals tied specific gods to certain constellations, blending astronomy and religion into one cohesive practice. A parallel process occurred in early Christianity, which adopted festivals on dates already sacred to Mediterranean solar cults. Numerous symbolic elements, such as divine birth during the winter solstice and a 3-day period of death and rebirth, follow earlier mythological patterns. Originally, myths were never meant to be literal explanations of reality, but transformative experiences that integrated ritual, symbol, and narrative to spark an inner awakening. Studying these symbols and myths with an open mind, without dismissing them as mere fantasies or taking them as literal historical truths, reveals a wealth of meaning. Each culture, in its own way, expressed similar archetypes, pointing to deep truths about death, rebirth, sacrifice, and enlightenment. This symbolic language operates like a universal idiom, speaking to us emotionally and rationally, linking distant peoples through invisible threads of significance. Dominant materialistic cosmology and science sees human beings as products of random evolutionary processes, living in a universe without purpose. Death would be the inevitable end. However, for many traditional cultures, and even for cutting-edge researchers in various fields, this fails to account for certain evidence regarding consciousness. There are rigorous studies of children who recall past lives in great detail, later verified by factual data. Dr. Ian Stevenson and his successor, Dr. Jim Tucker, documented thousands of these cases at the Department of Psychiatry at the University of Virginia, challenging the assumption that such memories are mere childhood fantasies. Near-death experiences also puzzle the scientific community. People without measurable brain activity have reported seeing details of the operating room, hearing conversations held elsewhere, or going through a life review. Physicians like Pim van Lommel have published these observations in scientific journals, stating that consciousness seemingly persists, at least for a while, without brain function, contradicting the notion that the mind is solely a byproduct of neural processes. In quantum physics, some theories suggest that consciousness is a fundamental element influencing subatomic particle behavior. David Bohm proposed that manifest reality, the explicate order, arises from a deeper, all-encompassing, implicate order where everything is interconnected. Amit Goswami says that monistic idealism consciousness as the core of existence could solve quantum paradoxes, echoing spiritual traditions that have long claimed that the mind shapes or creates reality. If consciousness exists beyond matter, concepts of multiple incarnations or an afterlife gain plausibility. For many traditions, Hinduism, Buddhism, and mystical Christianity, among others, earthly life is a stage for learning. Death is merely a transition to subtler states. This was long dismissed as superstition, yet it now draws some scientific attention as neurologists study the brain patterns of advanced meditators, physicists explore nonlinear models of time, and transpersonal psychologists investigate deep experiences in altered states of consciousness. All of this implies a re-evaluation of the human condition. If we are more than just physical bodies, what is our purpose here? Many suggest that we undergo an evolving expansion of awareness through successive experiences or meditative practices that transform perception and being. This view departs from a purely mechanistic outlook and encourages values such as compassion, collective responsibility, and environmental stewardship. The topics explored ancient civilizations, esoteric traditions, religious symbols and myths, secret societies, and our spiritual destiny are not isolated subjects but interconnected facets of a larger picture. Modern society, shaped by compartmentalization and specialization, often loses the thread that unites these domains. New findings about remote cultures with high levels of ingenuity, investigations into universal laws and subtle fields, recurring ancestral symbolism across cultures, and the presence of initiatory societies in the corridors of power challenge the notion of linear progress. We may be dealing with civilizational cycles and perhaps ancient solutions that became obsolete and were later rediscovered. The idea of a greater technical and spiritual heritage prompts us to question our role in the cosmos. When we widen the inquiry to include consciousness accounts of past life memories, near-death experiences, and quantum theories of mind, we see that uncovering who we truly are could demand reconciling science, spirituality, and philosophy. We do not have to abandon rigor or fall into baseless beliefs, but we might cultivate open dialogue among different methodologies, bringing together outer observation and inner exploration. We should then recover a more holistic view of humanity, something ancient traditions seem to manage more seamlessly by integrating disciplines and dimensions of existence. This does not mean dismissing our technological or scientific progress, but acknowledging the limits of a purely materialistic framework. The future might require merging modern capabilities with ancestral wisdom, creating more sustainable and humane practices and systems. We end our journey here, but the topic remains open. Questions about our mysterious past and the nature of our minds are far from settled. History is not closed off. New evidence may still transform everything we think we know. The same holds true for consciousness studies, which continue to surprise researchers. As Newton once said in a humble metaphor, "I seem to have been only like a boy playing on the seashore, now and then finding a smoother pebble or a prettier shell than ordinary, while the great ocean of truth lay all undiscovered before me." May this exploration shed light on how much we still have to discover and serve as an invitation to reflect, not only on what we once were, but on what we can become.